The room fell silent when the CEO leaned toward the single father and whispered the question no one had expected her to ask. "Is my age a problem?" she said, her voice barely audible beneath the soft music and laughter of the charity gala. For a moment, Daniel Carter simply stared at her. Not because he was offended, but because he could see something behind her confident smile that everyone else had missed. Fear. Real, painful fear. She was one of the most powerful women in the city, yet standing there in a silver dress with hundreds of people watching her, she looked strangely alone. Daniel had not even wanted to attend the party. He had only come because his supervisor had insisted that employees attend the annual charity event hosted by the company. Daniel was a 40-year-old single father who had spent most of his adult life putting someone else first. His 8-year-old daughter, Lily, was the center of his world. Since his wife had passed away 3 years earlier, Daniel had learned how to become everything his daughter needed: father, cook, nurse, homework helper, alarm clock, and sometimes the person who quietly cried in the bathroom after Lily fell asleep. He worked long hours as a maintenance manager for a commercial building, but he never complained. His apartment was small, his car was old, and his savings were almost non-existent. Still, every Friday evening, he brought Lily her favorite strawberry cupcakes, and every night he sat beside her bed until she fell asleep. Daniel believed that a good life wasn't measured by money, titles, or expensive clothes. It was measured by the people who knew they could count on you. If you believe kindness, second chances, and genuine love still matter in a world that often judges people too quickly, take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. That night, Daniel stood awkwardly near the edge of the ballroom, wearing the only suit he owned. He had borrowed a pair of polished shoes from his brother and spent nearly 20 minutes trying to tame his hair. Around him were wealthy executives, investors, celebrities, and people whose names appeared regularly in business magazines. Daniel felt like someone who had accidentally walked into the wrong building. Then he noticed her. Victoria Hayes was 36 years old, the youngest CEO in the company's history, and one of the most respected business leaders in the state. She had built her company from a small technology startup into a multi-million-dollar organization. People admired her intelligence and feared her determination. She was known for making decisions quickly and never allowing emotions to interfere with business. But Daniel noticed something different. While everyone else was trying to get close to Victoria because of her position, she kept looking toward the ballroom doors. Every few minutes, she checked her phone and then slipped it back into her purse. She looked as though she were waiting for someone who wasn't coming. Daniel didn't approach her. He had no reason to. Instead, he quietly helped an elderly waiter who had dropped a tray near the kitchen entrance. Daniel picked up the glasses, steadied the man's shaking hands, and told him not to worry. Victoria saw the entire thing from across the room. Later, when Daniel stepped outside for some fresh air, he found Victoria standing alone on the terrace. She asked him whether he was enjoying the party. Daniel smiled and admitted that he was mostly counting the minutes until he could go home to his daughter. Victoria seemed surprised. She asked whether he was married, and Daniel gently explained that he was a widower. Something changed in her expression. She apologized, but Daniel told her there was nothing to apologize for. He said losing someone had taught him something important: life was too short to waste time pretending to be someone you weren't. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. Then came the question. Is my age a problem? Daniel finally understood what she was really asking. She wasn't asking about a number. She was asking whether someone could look at her and see a woman instead of a CEO. Whether someone could choose her without caring about her money. Whether she was too young to be taken seriously, too successful to be trusted, or too guarded to ever be loved. Daniel took a slow breath. No, he told her. Your age isn't the problem. The problem is that you think you have to earn the right to be loved. Victoria froze. Those words reached somewhere no business deal ever had. She looked away, blinking rapidly. She confessed that people had always wanted something from her. Investors wanted her signature. Employees wanted promotions. Men wanted access to her lifestyle. Even her own family treated her success like a bank account they could withdraw from. She had begun believing that perhaps there was something wrong with her because nobody seemed interested in the woman beneath the title. Daniel didn't tell her that he could fix her loneliness. He didn't promise anything. He simply listened. And for Victoria, that was something extraordinary. Over the following weeks, their lives slowly began crossing more often. Victoria started noticing Daniel at work. He was never trying to impress anyone. He arrived early, worked hard, and left on time whenever he needed to pick up Lily from school. One afternoon, Victoria saw Daniel sitting in the company cafeteria helping Lily with a school project. Lily was building a cardboard model of a lighthouse. Daniel carefully held the pieces while his daughter glued them together. Victoria smiled from a distance. She had never seen her father help her with anything when she was young. For the first time, she understood what Daniel possessed that money couldn't buy. He knew how to make someone feel safe. But their growing friendship didn't go unnoticed. Rumors spread through the company. Some employees whispered that Daniel was trying to climb the corporate ladder. Others said Victoria was making an emotional mistake. One executive even warned Victoria that dating a man with a child and an ordinary job could damage her reputation. Victoria pretended not to care. But Daniel heard the whispers. And they hurt. He had spent his entire life trying to prove that he was more than his circumstances. Now people were reducing him to the size of his paycheck. One evening, Daniel told Victoria that perhaps they should stop seeing each other. He said he didn't want to become another burden in her life. Victoria looked at him with tears in her eyes. She told him he had never been a burden. Daniel explained that Lily had already lost one parent. He couldn't bring someone into her life unless he was certain that person wouldn't disappear. Victoria didn't answer immediately. Instead, she asked to meet Lily. Daniel hesitated. But Lily had already heard about Victoria. When they finally met at a small neighborhood park, Lily studied Victoria carefully before asking the question children often ask without fear. "Do you make my dad happy?" Victoria smiled through tears. "I think he makes me happy." Lily nodded as though she had just received the answer she needed. Then she handed Victoria a small paper bracelet she had made herself. Victoria wore it for months. Their relationship didn't become perfect overnight. There were disagreements, misunderstandings, and moments when Daniel wondered whether their worlds were simply too different. Victoria had meetings that lasted until midnight. Daniel had school pickups, grocery bills, and parent-teacher conferences. But they learned something important. Love wasn't about having identical lives. It was about making room for each other's lives. Victoria began spending Sunday mornings with Daniel and Lily. She learned that Lily hated broccoli, loved astronomy, and was terrified of thunderstorms. Daniel learned that Victoria secretly loved old romantic movies and always became nervous before giving major presentations. The woman who could command a boardroom with one sentence would sometimes call Daniel because she didn't know what to cook for dinner. And the man who once thought he had nothing special to offer slowly began realizing that perhaps being dependable was its own kind of wealth. Then came the night that nearly destroyed everything. Victoria's company faced a major financial crisis. A powerful investor threatened to pull millions of dollars from the company unless Victoria removed several employees from their positions. Daniel was one of the employees on the list. Victoria refused. The board accused her of allowing personal feelings to interfere with business. Daniel begged her not to sacrifice the company for him. Victoria finally told him that she wasn't saving him because she loved him. She was protecting him because he deserved to be judged by his work, not by his relationship with her. The board eventually backed down after an independent review proved Daniel's department had actually saved the company thousands of dollars. For the first time, Victoria understood that she didn't have to choose between being powerful and being human. She could be both. Months later, Daniel took Victoria back to the same terrace where she had once asked whether her age was a problem. The city lights stretched beneath them like stars. Victoria remembered that night and laughed softly. She asked Daniel whether he still remembered what she had said. He told her he remembered every word. Victoria admitted that she had been afraid then. She had spent years believing that her success made her difficult to love. She thought perhaps her age, career, money, and independence made her too complicated for someone like Daniel. Daniel took her hand. He told her that the number of years someone had lived was never the thing that determined their worth. Character did. Loyalty did. Compassion did. The courage to love after heartbreak did. Then he looked at her and said something she would remember forever. I didn't fall in love with the CEO. I fell in love with the woman who was brave enough to admit she was lonely. Victoria cried. Not because she was sad. Because for the first time in years, someone had seen her completely. A year later, Daniel and Victoria stood in a small garden surrounded by close friends and family. There were no cameras, no reporters, and no business executives trying to shake hands with the CEO. There was only Lily standing beside them, proudly holding a basket of flowers. Victoria had never wanted a huge wedding. She wanted something real. As they exchanged promises, Daniel looked at Lily and then at Victoria. He realized that life had somehow given him a second chance after he had stopped believing second chances were meant for people like him. Victoria realized something too. The greatest success of her life wasn't the company she built. It was the home she finally found. Years later, people would still talk about Victoria Hayes, the brilliant CEO who transformed her company and became one of the city's most respected leaders. But those who knew her personally remembered something else. They remembered the woman who once stood alone on a terrace and whispered that she was afraid her age might be a problem. And they remembered the single father who looked beyond her title, her money, and her reputation and reminded her that love had never been about numbers. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who believes that people deserve to be loved for who they truly are, and subscribe for more stories about kindness, hope, and second chances. And before you leave, comment "Love sees the heart" if you believe a person's past, age, money, or social status should never decide whether they deserve happiness. Because sometimes the person who seems to have everything is secretly the one who needs someone to tell them, you don't have to prove your worth anymore. And sometimes, the greatest love story begins with a simple question, and an answer that changes everything.